Number 1.
Maurice left his family's Fort Lauderdale, Florida residence on November 30, 1983, to attend a basketball practice at nearby Dillard High School, where he was a student. It has been established that Maurice arrived at the Franklin Park basketball court that day, but he never showed up for practice. Two teenage girls reported they saw him being forced into an Oldsmobile by two unidentified African American men, but this has not been confirmed. He has never been heard from again. Maurice was involved in many activities in 1983. He was choir boy at the Piney Grove First Baptist Church, he played junior varsity basketball and ran track, and he was a junior ROTC cadet. He dreamed of becoming a doctor someday. Maurice left his wallet, money and identification behind at his grandmother's home in the 200 block of Northwest 30th Terrace. At the time of his disappearance, he lived back and forth between his grandmother's residence and his mother's home in Alabama. His grandmother still lives in the same house she shared with him in 1983 and has kept the same phone number. Due to police procedures in place at the time Maurice vanished, authorities did not begin searching for him for 3 days after his disappearance was reported. His case remains unsolved, and little evidence is available as to his fate. Some agencies state Maurice went missing on November 28, 1983. In 2009, a documentary filmmaker announced her intention to make a film about his disappearance.
Number 2.
Palumbo resided in Tucson, Arizona with her family until 1999. She relocated to Reno, Nevada to live with her grandmother at that time. Palumbo was employed as a clerk in a pawn shop in 2000. She apparently became involved with drugs, namely methamphetamine, prior to her disappearance. According to her friends, Palumbo's income from her job in a local pawn shop no longer supported her drug usage. Authorities believe she may have turned to prostitution in early 2000 as a means of financial gain. Palumbo called her mother on April 25, 2000 and was paranoid during the conversation. Her mother said that Palumbo believed she was being followed and that her telephone was tapped. Palumbo's mother also said that her daughter mentioned the possibility of moving back to Arizona soon and wanted to make a new life for herself. An officer at Reno Tahoe International Airport discovered Palumbo in a restricted area of the facility shortly after 12 a.m. on April 26, 2000. Palumbo told the officer that she was searching for her sister, who she claimed had run out onto the tarmac. The officer stated that he believed Palumbo was hallucinating at the time. He did not believe her story, but he dropped Palumbo off at the entrance to the Reno Hilton Hotel and Casino. At approximately 1:30 a.m. Palumbo was last seen near the entrance of the building by the valet parking area. She never checked into the hotel and has not been heard from again. Palumbo's vehicle was discovered illegally parked and abandoned at the airport on April 27, 1 day after her disappearance. The majority of her personal belongings were found inside the car, along with her cellular phone and her purse, which contained $600 in cash. Palumbo left behind 3 emails addressed to the White House, stating she believed the federal government was attempting to murder her. A drawing of a woman fitting her description was also discovered in the vehicle, which depicted the female bound and gagged. 2 books that specialized in changing identities were also found inside Palumbo's car. The owner of the Silver Dollar Casino in Elko, Nevada, claimed that Palumbo was inside her establishment in December 2000, 8 months after Palumbo disappeared. The owner told authorities that the woman became nervous when she saw a man peering through the bar's window during the evening. According to the owner, the woman then departed from the Silver Dollar Casino with another female. Authorities have been unable to confirm if the unidentified woman in the establishment was indeed Palumbo. Foul play is suspected in her case.
Number 3.
Walcott moved to Reseda, California in 1985 from her family's home in Farmington, New Mexico. She planned to finish her senior year at Reseda High School and lived with her aunt and her cousin on Sherman Way. Walcott was injured in 2 automobile accidents during the year and had to wear a neck brace afterwards. She found the brace made it difficult to sit through classes and stayed home to recover from her injuries. She began feeling well enough to search for a job as a cashier during the spring of 1986. She left her aunt's apartment on April 29, carrying her birth certificate and several job applications. Walcott dropped an application off at the 7-Eleven convenience store on Sherman Way during the late morning hours. She met 2 friends at Winchell's Donuts next door and departed shortly after 12 p.m. Walcott told her friends she wanted to drop off an application at Sav on Drugs in the shopping center near Etiwanda Avenue and Sherman Way. She turned the corner and disappeared. Walcott has never been heard from again. The manager of Sav on Drugs told authorities that she never arrived at the business. Her family stated that it is extremely uncharacteristic of her to leave without warning, and she left all her clothes and belongings behind. Extensive searches of the area produced no clues as to her whereabouts. Walcott's case remains unsolved.
Number 4.
Lackey was last seen in Roebuck, Alabama on July 29, 1985. He went to his sister and brother-in-law's home and gave him 3 letters. He told his brother-in-law he planned to commit suicide and showed him a backpack with a sawed-off 20-gauge shotgun and a .357 caliber Magnum revolver, a trenching tool and a sketch of what appeared to be a cave or a mine. Then he walked away. Lackey's brother-in-law immediately called the police, but they refused to intervene. Lackey has never been heard from again. In his notes, Lackey said he was tired of living. His wife had left him for another man a decade before, and he hadn't dated anyone since. His ex-wife was murdered by her new husband in 1983. Lackey was also traumatized by his experiences serving with the army in the Vietnam War. Lackey wrote that he planned to walk into a secluded area in the woods near the St. Clair-Jefferson County line, dig a grave and bury himself, and commit suicide. He wrote he hoped his body would never be found. The night of his disappearance, his silver 1982 Chevrolet pickup truck was found abandoned on Weaver Avenue, less than 100 yards from Interstate 20 in St. Clair County. A search of the area turned up no sign of him. Lackey lived with his mother in Roebuck at the time of his disappearance. Before his disappearance, he sold his belongings and left the money to her. He had worked a series of jobs, but none of them lasted very long. He did not drink alcohol or use drugs, and he had no prior history of mental illness or bizarre behavior. Although his body has never been found and his loved ones hope he is still alive, there has been no indication of Lackey's whereabouts since July 1985, and investigators believe he is deceased.
Number 5.
Matthias was last seen near Oroville, California on February 24, 1978. He went missing with 4 friends: Jackie Charles Hewitt, Jack Anton Madruga, William Lee, Bill Sterling and Theodore Earl, Ted Weir. The men were part of a day program for mentally handicapped adults and played on a basketball team. Photos of all of them are posted with this case summary. Matthias's companions, who were close friends with each other and frequently spent time together, were all mentally disabled to some degree. Hewitt couldn't read, write or dial a telephone and was very dependent on others, but the others were higher functioning. It isn't clear how Matthias, who didn't have intellectual disabilities, got to know them. On the night of February 24, 25, they were supposed to play a basketball game in Chico, California, then return to their homes. They all lived with their parents. Matthias and Madruga were both licensed drivers. Madruga was going to drive them that night. The 5 men never returned home. On February 27, their car was found on a mountain road in the snow on a Plumas National Forest Service road, 70 miles from Chico and far from their route home. Although it was at the snow line and its tires had spun, it wasn't stuck, and the men could have pushed it free, and it had a quarter tank of gas and was in operable condition. The area where the vehicle was located is heavily forested, mountainous and rocky. The snow was 4 to 6 feet deep, and a storm was raging in the area at the time. The men were not dressed appropriately for the weather, they all wore street clothes and low-cut shoes. Madruga was the only one who ever drove that vehicle. He didn't like camping or cold weather, and none of the men were familiar with the area. In June 1978, after the spring thaw, the bodies of Madruga, Hewitt, Weir and Sterling were found. Authorities found Weir's body in a Forest Service trailer in the Daniels Inc. campgrounds, 19.5 miles from where the car had been. He was lying on a bed, with 8 sheets pulled over his corpse and tucked around his head. Weir had lived for an extended time period, perhaps 4 to 6 weeks after arriving at the cabin, but eventually died of exposure. He had lost 80 to 100 pounds before dying, he had lost 5 toes to frostbite, and he had blood poisoning and gangrene in his lower legs. His shoes were missing, but his ring, necklace, and wallet with cash were sitting on the table next to the bed. There was also a gold Waltham watch, with its crystal missing. It didn't belong to any of the 5 men. Weir had apparently gained access to the trailer through a broken window. Although there were matches and paperback books and wooden furniture, no one had started a fire, and no one had touched the propane tank nearby. 31 cans of food from an outside storage shed had been opened, but there was an unopened locker in the shed that contained enough food to have fed all 5 men for a year. The cans of food needed to be opened with an Army P-38 can opener, which only Matthias and Madruga would have had experience using. It's worth noting that, according to his family, Weir had very poor judgment and lacked common sense. Once, when his family's home caught fire in the night, Weir's brother had to physically drag him out of the building, as Weir wanted to go back to sleep so he would be well rested for work the next day. Investigators believe Sterling and Madruga never made to the trailer. Their bodies were found 8 miles short of it, on opposite sides of a mountain road, 2 days after Weir's body was found. Police think Hewitt and possibly Matthias came to the trailer with Weir, but then left again. The day after Sterling and Madruga were found, Hewitt's skeletal remains were located along the same road, but much closer to the trailer. Searchers did find 3 Wolf Forest Service blankets and a rusted flashlight about a quarter of a mile northwest of the trailer. They found Matthias's sneakers inside the Forest Service trailer with Weir's body. Authorities think Matthias might have put on Weir's shoes, which were a larger size than his own, after his feet got swollen from frostbite. An extensive search turned up no sign of him or his body. Matthias first showed signs of mental illness in high school and was hospitalized as a sophomore. He joined the army in the early 1970s but abused drugs consistently during his years in service, and his mental illness got worse. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and given a medical discharge. After his discharge, he returned to California and continued to abuse drugs, including methamphetamine, and was arrested and jailed multiple times for various offenses, including violent attacks on both men and women. He was hospitalized multiple times and had a history of escapes. Once, in 1974, he escaped from a state mental hospital in his pajamas and watched and hitchhiked almost 100 miles home. Another time he talked from Portland, Oregon to Marysville, California, a distance of 540 miles. His life straightened out after he began taking his psychiatric medications consistently. He held down a job at his stepfather's gardening business and also had disability pay from the army, and by the time of his disappearance, he had not been arrested or gone haywire in 2 years. He became friends with Hewitt, Madruga, Sterling and Weir a few months before they all disappeared. The 4 men's relatives believe it's possible that Matthias was somehow involved in the incident that led to their deaths. Investigators don't believe Matthias is still alive, however, they stated that he always kept in touch with them, and without his medication, he could not have been able to stay off the grid even if he had wanted to. Matthias is presumed deceased, but remains classified as a missing person.
Number 6.
Kerstetter was last seen on September 12, 1987 at 11 p.m. during his weekend shift. He worked as a maintenance man and a security guard at Corning Glassworks in Bradford, Pennsylvania. He had been employed there for 29 years. The next morning, on September 13, a fellow security guard found Kerstetter's lunch pail, newspaper and keys on a cafeteria table. Kerstetter's truck was still in the parking lot. A search of the truck showed that Kerstetter's truck keys were still in the ignition, and his .22 caliber gun holster was inside the vehicle, but the gun itself was missing. A carton of cigarettes and Kerstetter's day pack were also found. No sign of Kerstetter was found in and around the plant. There was no indication of forced entry and no signs of a struggle. A police dog traced Kerstetter's scent to the second floor of the plant, where the glass furnace was located. This area was not part of Kerstetter's normal security rounds. They discovered that $250,000 worth of platinum pipe was missing. An examination of security tapes from 3 security cameras showed a masked intruder in the back of the plant. In one shot, the intruder was seen around the area where the platinum was missing. In a second shot, Kerstetter is seen talking to the masked intruder. As both Kerstetter and the intruder walked out of the second floor, Kerstetter looked directly into the security camera. Authorities do not know if Kerstetter was signaling for help or flaunting a crime. A third shot shows the intruder wheeling out a large bag. Police speculate that the bag contained the missing platinum or Kerstetter's body. Kerstetter was having financial problems at the time of his disappearance, and Bradford police believe that he willingly participated in the robbery. His family disagrees, stating he was very close to his 6 children and would not have abandoned them. One of Kerstetter's daughters noted that security guards at the plant were supposed to check in every hour. Between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m., he did not check in. Kerstetter's case remains unsolved, and foul play is suspected in his disappearance.
Number 7.
Williams was last seen at approximately 12 p.m. in the 500 block of Main Street in Nucla, Colorado on May 27, 1999. He stopped by a local office and mentioned that he was en route to assist a stranded motorist in less than a mile east of his store. He owned Pro Body Shop in Nucla, but he was not a mechanic, and it was unusual for him to receive calls about car problems. Williams' friend was present at the time he answered the call from the unidentified person. His friend told authorities that he surmised the caller was female. Williams did not show any indication that anything was amiss at the time. Williams' wife called him at work after 12 p.m. to inquire about his lunch, but there was no answer at the business. She assumed he had to step out for work-related reasons and was not initially concerned. His wife reported her husband as a missing person when he failed to return home by the following morning. He has never been heard from again. Williams was driving his white 1994 Ford pickup truck, which had the words Pro Body Shop stenciled on the sides. A photo of it posted with this case summary. The truck was discovered submerged in 10 feet of water northwest of Nucla in July 1999, 5 weeks after his disappearance. The vehicle was located in a confluence of the San Miguel River and the Dolores River. Williams' wife viewed photos of the truck afterwards and noticed that the driver's side window was partially closed. She said her husband always drove with an open window. The vehicle's ignition was activated and the truck was in gear at the time of its discovery. Authorities believe that someone deliberately drove the vehicle into the river. Williams' wife does not believe that her husband was operating the truck at the time of the incident. A witness reported seeing an individual matching Williams' description at approximately 6 p.m. on May 27 at a market in Naturita, Colorado. A neighbor also claimed that Williams' truck was parked outside the Pro Body Shop approximately 90 minutes after he departed to assist the motorist. Investigators have been unable to confirm either sighting. Williams and his wife assisted a former friend's spouse quietly relocate to another state in 1998. The friend was allegedly incensed that Williams refused to divulge the man's former wife's location afterwards. Torn photographs featuring Williams and the man's family were discovered outside the Pro Body Shop shortly afterwards, and there were .22 caliber bullets were also scattered near the scene. Williams' wife operated a local video store and found her husband's .22 caliber revolver inside the nighttime drop box several weeks later. Authorities believe that someone broke into Williams' business and stole the photos and the gun. Investigators questioned the couple's former friend, who denied involvement in the burglaries. He explained his whereabouts during the time Williams disappeared, and investigators dismissed the individual as a possible suspect. There have not been any arrests in connection with Williams' case, which remains unsolved.
Number 8.
Duane was a student at Williamsville North High School in 1974. On October 30, he called his mother and told him not to pick him up at school because he was going out with a friend to Akron Park. He asked his mother to pick him up at Miles Road. Duane's mother went to Miles Road as instructed, but Duane never showed up. He has never been heard from again. A Tonawanda, New York man named Michael Thurman confessed to Duane's murder in 1986. A photograph of Thurman is posted with this case summary. He first became a suspect in Duane's disappearance in 1986. Thurman, who was 18 years old in October 1974, says Duane met him on October 30 at County Road in Clarence to complete a drug transaction. The two of them began to argue over money, and the argument escalated into a fight. Thurman shot Duane to death and buried him near North French Road in North Amherst, New York. Police spent months digging at that location after hearing the confession, but never found any remains. For many years Thurman remained a free man because authorities did not feel they had the evidence to convict him of Duane's murder without a body. However, in recent years the courts have become more lenient in prosecuting homicides where there is no body, and the presumption of Duane's death was great. Since his disappearance he has not contacted his family or any of his friends, and he left all his personal belongings behind. Authorities made the decision, in June 2003, to charge Thurman with second-degree murder in Duane's death. They elicited statements from witnesses who say they heard Thurman talk about killing him. Thurman was offered a plea bargain by prosecutors where he would face 5 to 15 years in prison. He took it, pleading guilty to first-degree manslaughter. Duane remains missing. No trace of him was ever located.